let's just check that we've got everything that we need. Just a second, I haven't marked my circle, and I'm going to be doing the V-neck option, and I need to mark my circle on. I'm just going to get the pattern. So I can mark the circle. Wait a second. Sorry guys, I am here if you're just joining. I am here. Looks like I'm not. I don't know where that circle is on this pattern. Hello, Ellen. That's annoying. Never mind. I meant to have a circle on here, but I've got one of the old versions, and I think that's not got it on. Hi guys, so let's see who is here. We have got Joan, we've got someone from Sweden. Hi Vanessa, welcome to the Sewalong. Thanks for making it live, guys, making the live rather. Hi Angela. Hello. Hi Alexis, and hi Vet. And we may, I don't know if I missed Rosie joining, but she'll be joining shortly if I missed it whilst I was faffing around with my pattern. Oh, hello Celia. Hi Caroline. Nice to see some familiar names popping up there. Yeah, I feel all of a fluster. We've been trying to sort out a camera for tonight. I'll talk to you a bit later on about tonight, but for the big sew. And like we've got 3 MacBooks here, and it only worked on one of them. Crazy, but hopefully we've solved it. So I'm a bit of a fluster because I wasn't having my normal calm before I start. So today we are doing the sew along for the Salma, which we can now talk about because it is out there in the wild. I have got the V-neck one here, which we made for Kat, that's actually quite loose. In fact, when we did the photo shoot on her, we were like, oh, it's a bit big. And this is the longer version as well, because there's 2 hem lengths on it. And I am wearing a hack of this Salma in a jumper. And this is what we did. We did some filming this week for Stitch School, and we have done a hack video on how to hack it into a little crop jumper with a little slit, and that is going live this weekend on Stitch School. So for those of you on Stitch School, you'll get that extra video on how to hack it into a jumper, and I have to say it's very wearable as a jumper. I tried making this longer, deeper, so I added about an extra inch on there, but I don't think it's that much better. I just thought, oh, I wonder if it was a little bit more exaggerated, what would that look like? So yeah. It's a very nice, easy hack to make it into a jumper, guys, and we talk you through it in Stitch School. So whatever type of membership you have for Stitch School, you'll be able to access it, and it'll be going live on Saturday, I believe. So today, though, I'm going to be making the V-neck option, and I've already made a round neck option. I've made this, but I haven't made the V-neck option, and I haven't actually made it before, so I've been swatting up on the instructions just before we went live and hoping that I'll be able to do it. I'm sure I will, but it's the fiddlier, and I thought it'd be good to do the fiddlier version with you guys. All the fabrics that I am wearing, all the fabrics that are being featured are actual fabrics that we have. Now I don't know if I've seen Rosie pop up yet, but if she's not yet online, I'll remind her later and we'll get some links to it. But basically this is our classic navy poker in the Roma Ponte. The one that I'm wearing is ribbed red and black Ponte, and then this is the furlough, which is what I'm going to make my dress out of, which is gorgeous. Hi Lorianne. Hi Katie. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. Now I'm making the size 10 version, And I think I forgot, when I made my other version, I was meant to make it slightly roomier at the hips, but I think I forgot to do that on this one, so I might be just taking a smaller seam allowance when I do that. And then, oh, we've got someone joining for their first live. Yay! Welcome to the live sew along. So glad you could make it. It is obviously really nice if you can make the live, because you can feel like you're part of it at that point when it's happening. But yes, so I was going back. So I'm making a size 10. We have asked for lots of people. We've been having quite a few people asking about saying about sizes and what size am I and what size are other models, just so you've got a gauge for what size you think they are. So I have said that I will try and keep talking about what size I am right now. Obviously, you know, as a woman, you change sizes throughout your life, and things, you know, are at one point I'm one size and then the other I'm not. So it's difficult to be like, I am always this size. But what I can do is say what size I am at the moment, and then therefore you can see why I've chosen to cut that size. So at the moment my bust is 34 inches, my waist is 28, and my hips are 39.5. So my hips are slightly bigger than our size 10, which is why I generally need to just allow for a little bit extra there. But given this is jersey, I think it'll be fine. Now the Salma dress comes with 2 lengths. That's the longer length, and I'm making the shorter length. But word of warning, the shorter length is quite short. Now I'm 5'7", so definitely on me, probably when I made the first version, which was in grey, and which is the one that I've chatted about when you see me on YouTube talking about the Salma dress, and also on Instagram I'm wearing that one. I probably should have added an extra bit of length there. So I think, I remember, I cut this out a while ago, but I think I cut a bit of extra length on this. But it doesn't really matter, because you can wear it with leggings or with really thick wool tights. And I'm not really too worried about the length of my dresses at the moment, because I'm not going out. So it's not like I'm like, oh gosh, that'll be a bit indecent. But anyway, just so, yeah, if you are tall like me, 5'7", you might want to add a bit of length onto the short version. So, oh, right, what have we got here? So I'm just going to talk through your pieces. So you should have a front piece. We should have a back piece. And we should have sleeves. And then if you're doing and then you should have some form of neckband, whether it's for the V-neck, the round neck, or the roll neck. Has anyone seen Rosie join? Sorry, Rosie, if you have joined, can you say hey? And if you haven't joined, I might just get somebody to... Oh, Molly's just sitting here because we've been working together. She's going to just check that Rosie's coming online soon. Otherwise, you'll get really shoddy answers to your questions from me. I'm just going to check that. I know I haven't done my notches in for the neckband, so I'm just going to do that. Fine. And that. And then, yeah. And this one here. Oh, thanks guys. Glad you liked the pattern. We did try and rearrange things a little bit so that we had some more comfy to wear patterns coming out last month and this month, because that's what we all want at the moment, isn't it? Okay, that is now done.
She'll be there in a second.
Rosie is coming imminently, guys. She will be joining us. She's obviously busy just finishing something off. What we shall crack on without. So I'm going to move my sleeve to one side. Oops. I'm going to move my back to one side. And I'm going to grab... Ooh, what's that? Don't know what that is. I'm going to do my bust darts. Now, this is quite unusual that we've got bust darts in this version. And that's because I wanted this to not just be a straight up and down dress. I wanted it to have shape. Oh, Rosie's online. Wonderful. Hi, Rosie. I was getting panicky that I was on my own. So yeah, I didn't want it to be a straight up and down dress. I wanted it to have shaping. And also, for those of you that have a fuller bust, it would make it much easier to get it to fit you. Excuse me. Now I've got a tickly cough. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I'm just marking the points of my dart whilst I'm chatting. Rosie, So just a load of things to ask you to do before I forget. So if you could link to the fabrics that I'm using. So this is Thurlow, we've got the black ribbed in the hack version, and also the classic polka dot. And you can see, guys, the link to the pattern that we're making, which is our brand new Salma dress, is just going up there. We've named this one after our lovely model Salma, who is the front cover model of this. Right, so we're going to make our darts first. That's the first thing we're going to do. So what I've done here is I've just placed it right sides together, lining up those notches, and then making sure that that point of the dart is sitting right on the folded edge, and then just pinning that there. And then I'm going to give myself a nice stitch line so that I can sew along there nice and easily. There we go. So that's one dart marked. Okay. And then we'll go for the other one. Right sides together. Line up your notches. Get your point of your dart on the edge. Oh, great. All the links are going up there now. I'm just getting, this is not being, this is being annoying though. Let's get that into folding properly. I seem to have missed the notch. I don't know how I've managed that, but I don't seem to have the notch. I'll just mark that in. I don't seem to have the notch of the other part of the dart on this side. I'm going to put that in again because it's causing issues at the moment, me not being able to find it. There we go. Just put a little snip in there. Okay. So line those two up. There we go. And get that point on there, put another pin in the middle, and draw this. Okay, so darts are now marked, guys. Okay, so let's go ahead and stitch those. Now, when you're sewing jersey or knit on a regular machine, you need to use a zigzag stitch ideally, because that will just give you some give you some stretch in your stitch to match the stretch in your garment, in your fabric. So I'm going to put it on a really narrow stitch width of about 1 centimetre, and I'm going to put it on a stitch length of 2, not a centimetre, of 1. The stitch width of 1 on the machine and the stitch length of 2. Okay, right. So remembering that we reverse at the beginning and we don't at the end of the dart. So we stitch off the end so that we get a really fine point of the dart. I'm getting a little bit of jumping stitching there actually, guys. Not too bad. We'll see if it carries on. I might need to change my needle. It could be that the needle needs a change, even though it is a ballpoint. I have hammered this. I've forgotten when I last did. I've been sewing quite a lot recently and I've forgotten what last time I changed it. If it starts skipping stitches, it can be to do with a blunt needle or some, usually. Okay. Oh, Coco. No, off Coco, darling. Off, 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 off. She heard the machine. She came calling. Yeah, making some stitches. Right, guys, just stay there. I am going to have to get a new needle. Bear with. Bear with. All the needles in here. Just need to get the right one. Jeans, new. Twin, not using a twin needle. I think I'm going to have a stretch one in here, otherwise I'm just going to have to put a regular one in and hope it will be okay. It appears not. Oh well. I'll put a regular one in and we'll see how that goes. We don't have here. No. No. Here goes back again. Hello, Coco. Oh dear. Hi, Sal. Right, so I'm just going to unscrew this, take him out, and put this one in. Let's hope it sorts it out, otherwise I'll have to just soldier on and sew it and it will just have loads of gaps where the stitching didn't work. No, you can stay there, Coco, but if you start to interfere, you're going. Oh, got myself into a kerfuffle. There we go. Let's see if that's any better. I'm just going to sew along the dart again, guys. Just seeing if it is catching that fabric a bit better. No, Coco. No, sweetie. No. Okay, Coco. Off, off, off. You can't play with the machine, darling. Yes, that's fine. That's a lot better. Okay, let's just knock that off at the bottom. Okie dokie. Right, so darts are done. Now we do need to press those, but I'm just going to go on and do the shoulder seams so that before, because I'm going to have to get the iron up and put it down. And So I'm just going to do this, go straight on and do the shoulder seams. And then we're going to start the neckline. And those of you that joined a bit later will not have heard me anxiously say, I've not done the V-neck neckline yet before, so I'll be doing it with you guys for the first time. Had a little call with our pattern production manager Nicole before we went live, just to try and make sure I'd fully understood it. Hopefully I have. Coco's using the house as an obstacle course. As you can see, there's some chat going on about the big sew tonight. Very excited about that. I'll tell you about that in a little bit more detail at the end. For those of you who may not know what our big sew is, it's basically another big Zoom session that we're going to have together tonight. I hope. I don't need to hope. We are having it. I'm going to make it a weekly thing on a Wednesday. Right, so shoulders have been stitched together, right sides together. And then we're just going to sew them with our seam allowance, which is 5/8 of an inch. So the seam allowance across this pattern is 1.5 centimetres or 5/8 of an inch, unless we're doing the neckline, and the neckline is a centimetre. Okay, so I reverse, I didn't say, but I reverse at both ends of that seam. Okay, that's now done, so we can now press that open. Okay, and then need to move those, are going to drive me mad. Needles. It's literally, I've got about 100 needles there, but not the one I needed. So we're going to press these seam allowance open here. On that side, and then again here. Okay, and then we need to flip it so we can work from the front, and we're going to press those seams down. Oh, it's not seams, sorry, darts. And the same on that side. I'm just going to get Mr. Iron round the other side so I can... I'm not going over the ridge here, I'm just focusing the edge of the iron on the stitch line. So I don't want to flatten here and then create a ridge from that side. Be careful with that. Yeah, that's fine. Just check you're happy with it from the right side, which I am. And then we're going to need that iron actually quite soon after, because we're going to be pressing our neckbands in, but I need it out of the way for now. So this I'm going to just put to one side, and then I'm going to take my neckband. Now we have got, if you're doing the V-neck, you've got two pieces and you're going to join them. Now I want to check, I know the seam allowance for stitching it around the neckline onto the actual dress is 1 centimetre, but I just want to check if the seam allowance for joining them is 1.5 centimetres. So let's just have a look. Neckband 1, neckband 2, so it's in the neckband version 2. Yeah, we do need to do some stay stitching, but I'll come back to that. Okay. Yep, seam allowance is regular, so for just joining these together, we're just going to be doing it with 1.5 centimetres seam allowance. But I do need to make sure that I'm doing the right side. So there is notches. You see there's a notch. So for along this band here, there's a notch here and the same down here. It's close to that end. So it's that short end, not that one that we're stitching together. So I'm just going to pin that together. Okay. And now I'm going to stitch that with my seam allowance. I'll get my machine back up. Up there. And we're going to sew that. So 1.5 centimetres or 5/8 of an inch. Ooh, pop that back down. Make sure you reverse at the start. Okay. Oh no, back she comes. You can't see her, she's sitting here. Okay. So let's trim those bits off. and then we've got to do our stay stitching on our V-neck. Okay, so I'm going to press that open, but I'm going to do the stay stitching first. Whilst we've got the machine up, let's do that. So the reason why we stay stitch a V-neck is because it's a weak point. If you think about how the way that it's the angle that's cut into it, it really is a weak point in the fabric. So if you stay stitch, it helps strengthen it. We don't need to, we just need to do a little bit of that. So where the circle is, which unfortunately I've got one of the original patterns of this, so it doesn't have that on there. But where the circle is, you can, you need to basically mark where the circle is on there. So the circle should be 1 centimetre from the lower point of the V, and that should be able to mark that through from the pattern. Unfortunately on mine, didn't have that on there. So we are going to now just stitch. So I'm just checking what it says. Pivoting at the point 9mm seam allowance, start by 3 centimetres, circle marking. Okay, so we're going to go 3 centimetres down, then we're going to pivot and go up, and we're going to keep it within the seam allowance. So the seam allowance for the neckline is 1 centimetre, so we need to do it at 9mm. So stay stitch, I'm going to do as a single, as a straight stitch for this. Just under. So just a little bit here, you can see that's just there. That's just to strengthen the V-neck, okay? And I'm going to just mark that circle in with a really obvious chalk mark. Okay, I'm going to sneeze again. Excuse me. I should also say, guys, I completely forgot to tell you that I've just not done it, but I haven't bothered stabilising my shoulder seams, which we probably in the instructions say you should always do, but it's one of those things that you can judge that on the fabric that you're using. Now this is a very structured fabric, and I don't feel like it needs to have that on there. I really don't feel like, and with some things I wouldn't, something that is this kind of structured as a Roma Ponte, I wouldn't bother stabilising the shoulder seam. I didn't stabilise the shoulder seam on one of the ones that I did. I definitely would on this fabric though, and the red one, because it's slightly it's less structured, so it needs that to kind of keep the shape of the garment, but this will hold the shape. It's also to do with the recovery of the fabric as well. This is really quite a strong knit, so it just doesn't need to, but if you're not sure, you can just do it. So I think we recommend usually using a Vilene tape, but if you haven't got that, then you could just use I'm trying to think what we can just use a bit of ribbon just to stabilize it. It doesn't need to be, and actually the other day I was making an Edie top, and I didn't have anything to stabilize the neckline, so what I did is I just got some cotton fabric and I just ripped a really narrow strip and then pressed it flat and used that to create my own cotton tape essentially. Right, okay, so we've done that, we've prepped that. We now need to press this open. I'm just checking, I'm going to press that open, then we're going to press it in half. So, and Mr. Machine goes back down on the floor. Mr. Iron comes back up. That scared Colic off the table, so that's good. I've got this thermal vest underneath here, and I shouldn't have taken it off actually, because it's sticking to this fabric, so every time I move it just sort of sticks. Very annoying. Keeping me warm, but annoying to have as an undergarment. So we're just going to press that little short seam open, and then folding that wrong sides together to create your neckband. move her along. Keep that round my neck, so I know where that is. So now guys, we're going to pin this on, like so. So we are going to pin it on from the centre back. We're going to do one side and then we're going to do the other side. So some long good pieces of fabric. I'm going to try and get it into a position. There we go, so you can kind of see what I'm doing. So we need to mark. I didn't put a notch in the centre back of my neckline. So if you haven't done that, if you line up the two shoulder seams and then get your fabric to sit flat in a line along the curve of the back neck, and where it's folding and meeting, you can just put a snip in there. And where that little snip is where we're going to sit the seam of the neckband. Okay, go back. And then the notch that you've got there, so there's a notch there and a notch. Oh, sorry guys, you lost me. Oh, I'm sorry about that. No idea what I was waffling on about. When did you lose me, guys? You're back, don't worry. Okay, fine. So engrossed. So that notch is going to line up with the shoulder seam. Okay. So the notch, there should be one on both sides. So you can see there that you will have to stretch the neckband to get it to ease into the neckline of the dress. And then what we need to do here is just transfer the markings of the circle onto the neckband so we can see it. But the other thing that I need to do is I need to just check the width of the this folded neckband and check what it is. I have a tape measure, so it's 4 centimetres. And then where 4 centimetres comes to here, so if you line it up so that, I'm just trying to explain what I'm doing here. So you continue in this line of the V-neck and then mark 4 centimetres down from there. I'm just going to pop a pin in at that point. That is roughly where it will come to on the inside. So I'm just going to take this and show you what I'm talking about. We'll turn it inside out. We've got one to refer to. So this comes down. So if you think the V-neck is there, but the V-neck, it goes kind of a bit deeper than that because it's basically got to meet the other side. They're kind of going like that. Okay, so I think I'm explaining this a really confusing way. Basically what we need to do, I'm not going to explain it that way, I think that's more confusing. What we need to do is make sure that this extends, because you're going to have to stretch this to fit the neckline. If you don't do that, it's going to finish up there. But what you need to make sure is it's going to extend on beyond, and actually it's not 4 centimetres, it will be just over 1 centimetre, because otherwise you're not going to get the right stretch in. So you need to get that right. There isn't, I don't believe there's a notch. Was there a notch in? No, there isn't a notch there. So we just need to check that, because then you'll know. So if that's sitting 1 centimetre there, that gets flipped up like that. That one will then come in here and extend 1 centimetre as well. And that way you'll know you've got the right stretch. I hope I've made that relatively clear. And then we need to transfer the circle marking. So where your circle marking is, what I would do is put a pin in it and put the pin coming up from inside so that the point of the pin is there, and then it can come up into the neckband. still worrying about this, just need to check through that this is going to be right. Yeah, that will go to there, and that one will come to there. Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So we need to mark that circle. So at the moment it's marked on the garment, but we need to just mark it now so that you can see it on the neckband, not just on the neckline of the dress. Okay. So mark it through. Okay. So that's the exact point that we need to stop stitching. And then just put a pin in. Couple of pins. I tend not to overpin when I'm doing a neckline like this, because the pins will just get in the way. You're going to have to just ease it in on the machine. That many pins should be enough. Okay, I'll just show you what I've done there. Oops. Okay, let me just check that I haven't missed anything. Yes, so the short raw edges overlap the circle by 1 centimetre. Exactly, which they do, so that's fine. I made that far too confusing, measuring the widths of things. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sew from the centre back all the way down to the circle, to where we've marked there, and with a centimetre seam allowance or 3/8 of an inch. Up there. I'm going to just put another pin in here actually, because that's just moving away a bit too much. So we are going to have to stretch a little bit so that we can ease the dress into the neckline. So starting right on that seam, the centre back seam, popping it on the zigzag as well. We do need the stretch in this because this is going to fit over your head. So you need to be able to stretch with the fabric. And then what I do is I just stretch the neckband so that I'm going to be able to fit the neckline into the neckband. Okay, so my hands are really holding this steady on the machine, just holding it in as I go, just to make sure, because there's less pins, so your hands kind of have to act as pins. Okay, so we're coming up to the circle. Oops. Make sure we stop dead on that circle. Okay, let me pull that out. Let's trim off, and then I'll show you where we've got to. It's quite annoying actually having dark fabric. It's not so easy to see the stitching for you, but that's what we've done. So we've stitched on one side of the neckline. Now we need to do some pressing. So we need to do a little bit of pressing to get this side of the neckband into the almost where the finished position that it will be in, that will help us then finish the little front of the V. So what I want to do is press. Actually do it to the wrong side. So I'm going to press the seam allowance down, oops, towards the body of the dress. We need to as well. We've not snipped into our V, which we need to do that. Just seeing that now. In order to get this to sit properly, we are going to have to snip into the V, and that's another reason why we've done the stay stitching. But you're going to need to snip up to about 1 millimetre before you get to the stay stitching right at that V point. You'll see it when you're at this point. If you've not done it, you'll see you can't press it properly without that being stitched. Okay. So just press a little bit around here as well. Okay. It's a lot of back and forth of the iron and the sewing machine and the iron and the sewing machine. So let's get that back on the table. Try and get it into position so you can see the context of the dress. So this has to then tuck under here. I don't know if you can see it, but it's got to tuck under so that it's hidden like that. The seam allowance of the unstitched edge. So this has got a stitched edge here. We've tucked in the short end of that band there underneath, but then we need to flip this raw edge here. That just needs to be flipped like that. That seam allowance, and then pinched from the inside and flip like that so that you can stitch this little bit in place. And what we're going to do is machine tack that little short end in place. So I hold this up to you. So it's that little bit here. And I basically did it in 2 goes. So I've had to machine it in there. Sorry, tuck it under there. Then tuck under the seam allowance there so that I could grab that and then flip it. Okay? Just want to check that I'm not getting a little pleat there actually. Just be careful where your V is. You don't want to accidentally get a little V in. We don't want that. And then we're going to just machine tack that in place. Now I think, pop it in, tuck him in place. Machine tack, yeah, just along this little length. Okay, machine back up. So machine tacking is essentially machine basting. So you can just do that with a straight stitch and the longest stitch length your machine does. Oops, and I'm going to make sure that that's just within the seam allowance, just under the seam allowance really. Okay, so that's held in place, so I don't have to have a pin in there. Right, now we can go to the next side and start to pin that, so that that's in place. So move that so you can see. So this bit, let's pull that back out of the dress. So we're going to now pin this bit on, but before we do it, what we need to do is just mark from the circle point, ascent from the circle 7 centimetres, approximately 7 centimetres, up from there. And we're going to only stitch to that point so that we can finish this fiddly bit of the V-neck, and then we'll close that bit. So if you mark that now, annoyingly I don't have a tape measure, I've just got this pattern master. So from there, circle at the V, marking up 7 centimetres. I'm just going to use a pin and pop a pin in there. Okay, so just like we did with the other side, we're just going to line up this first notch on the neckband with the shoulder seam. Okay. Another pin in the middle there so that that's right, and then I'm going to make sure that this is going to extend the circle the right amount as well. So we need to make sure that this length here, and it's going to be a bit fiddlier because you've now got this shorter bit stitched in, but it needs to be essentially finishing in line with the other on the wrong side. That's the position it needs to be in. So if you want to just put a pin in, even though we're not going to stitch it like this at this point, if you let that overlap there and line up with the edge on the other side, it will at least just give you a reference for how much you need to ease Yeah, does that make sense? I've just pinned it over like that, and then I can see what the position it needs to be. I'm going to then just pop this pin, which marks the 7 centimetres from the circle. I'm going to put that through all the layers, and this is only the bit that I'm stitching anyway, so it doesn't really matter that that's pinned, but it does help you just make sure you're easing in the right amount and you're not going to end up with it being too short. So that's the problem when you're not fully stitching it all the way, is you might not ease it in properly. I should also say, guys, that this is the fiddliest of the necklines. If you want to do a simpler neckline, the roll neck or the round neck is a much simpler neckband. Right, so we're going back to our zigzag stitch. Out of the way. It's going to feel a little bit fiddly of this because I'm working from the other side, so I have got the rest of the garment here, but I just don't want to. I want to be sewing from this side, and I also, when you're sewing a neckline half and half, you don't want to sew down from the centre back towards the V on one side and then up on the other side, because it could drag. So it's much better to keep it even, so you're sewing in the same direction towards the V on both sides. So the option is you could flip it so that you're working from the dress side, and that means you'd then have all the stuff on the other side. But I think that it would be, it's better if you can see the neckband when you're easing in. So it means it's a bit fiddlier because you've got the fabric here, but it will help you sew more accurately. So back onto the zigzag stitch. Sorry, and not back onto centimetre seam allowance, not 5/8 of an inch. Now I'm just stretching that neckband as I go, using my fingers as extra pins to help me keep the fabric where it needs to be in order to keep that stretch for the ease. Okay. Coming up to the 7 centimetre pin that we put in. I'm going to stop at that point. Do a little reverse. We will come back and overlap over there when we do the finishing little seam there, but still good to do a reverse just to make it super strong. Okay, so essentially this is how it looks now. You have got it fully stitched down on that side, and on this side you've got a little flap, okay, that's not fully done. But what we need to do is we need to finish that inside before we can finish this little bit of the neckline. So I'm going to flip it in. See, we had it pinned roughly, but this time just line it up so that you're cross, overlapping and lining up the ends. So this end should intersect with the long edge here, and then underneath that all should be lined up as well from the other V-neck section, so that's lined up with that long side. Okay. Some awkward little bits of pinning there. Let's just move him out. I've accidentally caught too much. You need to make sure you're just catching the seam allowance, guys. Okay, so let me just see which side we finish first. Do we finish the little straight bit before? Oh, the piece might. I believe. yeah, ideally we should have pressed that little bit before. I think that might help you if you press the seam down. It just helps you allow this neckband to sit in a little bit better, but mine's sat in fine without pressing it, so you don't need to do it. You can see it's basically gone behind there. Just ignore that pin there. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to stitch the end of this now across the seam allowance here. So I'm just going to anchor the end of the neckband down into the seam allowance of the other side. I'm going to keep my zigzag stitch on because I'm going to need a bit of stretch along here. And do make sure you're not catching anything extra as you go. You don't want to be catching the dress, you just want to be catching the seam allowances at this point. Okay. Now that we've done that, we can then go in and just finish that little gap. So from the circle to the 7 centimetre marker, you can now finish that. So I'm going to take that pin out. I've got all my layers nicely together, everything's sitting flat on top of each other. And you can just stitch that. I might actually, it's going to be easier to sew from this side. I might just flip it and work from the dress side because I can see exactly where that circle point is there. So if you sew for this last bit from the dress side, you'll be able to see where the stitching of the other side intersects, and you'll get a more accurate point to stop. No cocoa. Right. V-necks are all about the precision in terms of where you stop or pivot at that V-neck. It really is the key thing to getting a V-neck to sit well. Cool. So let's turn it round and show you. Can you see that? Okay, so it's now got that overlapping. And that's just basically one's tucked under the other, they're stitched at the end and then they're continued down. Probably then, good idea just to give it a good press on the neckline before you go on to the sleeves, because it's so much easier to do it when you haven't got the sleeves in. But of course, guys, I'm going to try it on for you, because this is the end of part 1 of the Salma sew along. We're back tomorrow doing the others. But yeah, it needs to be pressed, guys. But you can see that's the V-neck. Right, thank you. I got through that. I was so worried that I was getting to too much of a kerfuffle. Managed not to get too much of a kerfuffle. Thank you for your patience, guys. Hope that was useful and interesting to see. I feel like I focused so much today on the instructions that I didn't really see any of the chat. I missed out. Well, hopefully tomorrow I'll get to see more of the chat. But tonight, guys, so I said I would mention it. Tonight is the big sew, and I hope some of you will be joining me at the big sew tonight. So 6:30 till 7:30. We're going to try and do a nice little regular sew session on Zoom so we can all sew together. It's not going to be like a sew along in that it won't be with a sewing machine, because we can't enjoy that together. It would just be awkward, and I kind of really thought about this. So the projects are going to be hand sewing related, and a bit of a kind of more of just a sort of a get together and a bit of stitch and a natter, because that's what I thought would be nice for us all right now. Certainly for me to be able to actually talk to some of you. So it'll be like the big sew that we did at Christmas, in that it will be on Zoom. It's £5 a ticket. You can still buy a ticket and get the link sent to you in time for tonight. And we'll be doing mindful embroidery. So I have been sewing up an example over the past couple of nights to show you that sort of thing. I'll be showing you how to do different embroidery stitches, and we'll just all be sitting and sewing and chatting. Really nice. So now, yeah, nattering with people from all over the world, exactly. And we'll also do our little breakout rooms so you guys can chat to each other. And we also suggest dress up if you feel like it. You don't have to, but if you feel like it, why not dress up? This is a nice thing. So I'm going to be making sure I wear a dress for you tonight, guys. So I'll see hopefully some of you at 6:30 tonight on the Zoom, and others I might just see you tomorrow on part 2 of the Salma sew along, which will be at 1 o'clock. See you then.